Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Garden of Thought, presented on the Sports Jedi Network, live on the network, and of course later on the download, both on Sports Jedi, Wrestling Soup Network, and of course the Garden of Thought platform itself. We're delving back into the area of law this week, and I'm trying to sort of nibble around the edges of healthcare law, one topic at a time, and ones that are of major issues. So like every time somebody gets shot, one side says, get rid of the guns. And the other one says, they're a crazy leftist or a crazy rightist. And then someone says, well, it's mental health. And then the same people crying it's mental health also hollow out the mental health system, which is not really, a great solution. And it's a frustrating system for a lot of people. Obviously, it differs from state to state and place to place and country to country because we have international listeners too. I can tell you I have gone through this indirectly in my own 6 degrees of separation, and it's can be very tough. And luckily, we have an expert today, attorney Mark Astor from the Addiction Law Firm with locations both in Boca Raton and Boston. So he's got your whole 95 corridor covered there, and also the Baker Act attorneys, and we're going to talk about all that stuff. Mark, thanks so much for being here.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me as a guest. It's nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. Is that Australian or British, or what am I listening to there?
So I'm originally from England. I've been in the US for 39 years. So maybe you take I've been here 2/3 of my life, so maybe I've got a bit of a twang. So it depends. Yeah. If I'm with my fellow Englishmen, it comes back. So
right. I think if you combine an Englishman with an American, you get an Australian.
That's exactly what happens.
Or maybe a South African.
Maybe that too.
Yeah. In any event, tell the good folks a little bit about yourself.
So as you pointed out, I'm an attorney. This is my 32nd year of practice. Our main office is here in Palm Beach County, Florida. And together with my wife, 10 years ago, I co-founded a law firm with the mission to save families whose loved ones are suffering from substance use, mental health disorders, and failed attempts at recovery. So we are speaking to families from all over the country, typically moms and dads who have an adult child with a long history of drug use, mental illness, treatment that doesn't work if they'll even go. They're probably med non-compliant. They may well have been a guest of the state through either the criminal justice system or the mental health system, and maybe even an overdose, and the family calls us to fix that problem. So that's what we do.
Okay. Well, I mean, I think that itself begs its own question. What are your, I guess go through your typical scenarios. You can do them one at a time if you like, or group them together, whatever you're more comfortable with. I'm sure you've done a similar type of presentation multiple times. And what are the solutions or the options that you can advise clients on where you can help them and make material changes that they most likely couldn't do on their own?
Yeah, there's 2 halves to the practice, and I think you mentioned the Baker Act. So about 60% of the work that we're doing is giving families control over what is typically an out of control situation when you've got a loved one with either a substance use disorder or a mental health disorder or a combination of both. The other 40% is where we are getting people out of Florida's broken draconian mental health system, and they are detained under Florida's Baker Act. But what folks don't understand is that sometimes those 2 worlds collide. And what I mean is we operate here, even when we're putting somebody into treatment, we're operating under 3 statutes: the Marchman Act, guardianship, and the Baker Act. So if you use the Baker Act statute correctly, well, it can be a very powerful life-saving tool. What happens is it's very easily abused. It's easy for someone to get locked up in a state facility and nobody actually knows they're there. And that's when I get the phone call, can you get them out? And the answer to that is yes. But again, those 2 worlds collide. And I spent I was a prosecutor for many years. I was also a criminal defense attorney for many years. That comes in handy sometimes because the criminal world also interacts with the civil commitment world. And while I don't take those cases anymore, I send them to a colleague. Understanding how the criminal justice system works is very important, because if somebody gets arrested and gets sucked into the criminal justice system, if you don't understand how those 2 worlds work, they can end up getting stuck there. And now you've got the state in your life through either the criminal justice system or the mental health system, and the family's basically left powerless. So it's about getting control over what is usually an out of control situation.
Are there major differences between Florida and with the other offices in Boston?
Yeah, so Massachusetts has its own versions of the statutes that we use. So our Baker Act is their Section 12, our Marchman Act is their Section 35. But even especially with the Section 35 in Massachusetts, it doesn't give you the option to use a private treatment center. And for a lot of the families, they want to be able to make the decision. They want to decide where their loved one's going. Because, I mean, not all treatment centers are created equally. And one may be more clinically appropriate than the other. And they want to be able to make that decision. And so, I mean, I'm a big advocate, and not just because I'm here in Florida, but we have great treatment here. There's 2 or 3 treatment centers that I work with and I would send my own family to. But the laws that we have here, I think, are second to none. And our judges, especially in South Florida, are really switched on to this stuff. And they understand that we're trying to get somebody some help and trying to give the family some control. Now, again, not all counties in Florida are created equal. So there might be some counties where I wouldn't file one case, but might file something different. So understanding how the different jurisdictions work within Florida is also very important to getting success.
I'm in Maryland. I'm licensed in Maryland and DC, and I don't believe that we have anything that's an equivalent of the Baker Act. The closest we have are emergency evaluations, or some people call wellness check, and involuntary admissions, which usually requires that you go as a victim to a court and apply basically for a protective order, a peace order, but then you have to make a second step that, that this is not really as much a criminal concern directly, though indirectly there's fear for well-being, health, and safety of somebody or somebodies, but it's because the person isn't in their right mind as well. So you're almost making their not guilty by way of insanity defense for them, but even then, somebody can be involuntarily institutionalized for like a period of 96 hours before they can be evaluated. And then it's like every week there's another, and a public defender gets assigned, and eventually the judge puts them out, usually because they're in basically a mental ward of a hospital that's basically a prison. And It's, as you were saying, it's not really an institution that's meant for healing. It's meant for incarceration, just a different kind of incarceration.
Exactly.
And as a parent, that can be heartbreaking, or as a relative, or as a friend, or a spouse, or whatever the case may be. And it is nice to have other options, but unless you have money for the other options, and even then, if you have someone that's over 18 and it's not cooperative, like you said, guardianship may have to be around, and someone's got to be served. If they're running about, I mean, there's no due process usually without someone being served. So I imagine these are all things that you encounter. I'll just let you take them in whatever order that you feel is appropriate, or you can correct anything that I've said that doesn't apply.
No, I mean, it sounds like we're on the same page. I mean, I think that every state has a version of the Baker Act, the kind of statute where if I was actively suicidal, you could pick up the phone, call 911, and have law enforcement come and basically detain me under that civil commitment statute. And that's what tends to happen here in Florida. But as a general rule, we don't use it offensively, in other words, to get somebody committed unless we absolutely have to, because it's obviously a lot quicker than running to court and filing a petition with the judge. But as a general rule, we are seeking relief in what we call, it's the probate division here in Florida, within the probate division of the courthouse. And these are confidential filings as a general rule. And it's anything from, let's get somebody picked up on an ex parte pickup order if we can show there's an imminent risk, to let's send them to treatment for the next 3 months, to, okay, now we need access to their medical records so we can see what's going on. We want to restrict their ability to travel so they don't leave the state. Perhaps they have financial resources that we want to control, deciding where they live, who they spend time with, making sure they take their medication. If we really want to get into the nitty gritty, we can apply for, some type of governmental benefits on their behalf. We could even take away a driver's license. So those types of things. And again, it depends what the family wants. What are your goals? How out of control are things? And, as we've gone through the last 10 years, and we've legalized marijuana here in Florida, and we had COVID, the kinds of cases from a clinical perspective that we're dealing with has changed dramatically, which makes them more challenging. It makes people more unpredictable.
Do you think it's the social self-isolation that's factored into it? I mean, I work from home. I love working from home, but there's something about not interacting with people live and in person on a daily basis. Also, you get fatter because you don't have to walk around a lot.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one.
Or at least I did. But I know that there are, kids who were in school who, really felt it was a trauma to not be in school, which is fine because when you're in school, all they want to do is not be in school. But, also with social media and things like this podcast, I'm sitting here on my office couch because it's wherever my butt is my office and my leisure. Is that playing? Are you seeing a spike because of that? And I'm sure like the affordability issues are part of it as well.
Well, so I think that the two things really shifted the focus of our cases. So just by way of background, when I opened up the office, I did so out of the local library in February of 2016. At the time, I was broke. I had no money to open up a law firm, but I was pretty motivated, and I had a real mission to help a group of people because of things that had happened in my family and close friends' families. So my focus back then was really alcohol and any kind of recreational drug. Then COVID came along, and what COVID did was, as you correctly pointed out, people became isolated. And I started getting a lot of calls from other lawyers saying, hey, our clients are getting Baker acted, right? They're getting sucked into Florida's mental health system. And the common opinion is once you're there, you can't get out, at least for 72 hours. Well, I mean, one of the things that the statute contemplates is habeas relief. And I said, well, it sounds like I need to file a habeas petition. And after that, it just took off like a rocket. And I think I've filed, almost 900 cases at this point since COVID to get people out of the system. And I get 3, 4, 5 calls every single day about people who are stuck in the system or who got stuck and now they're out, but they feel like they got wronged. And that's, an interesting topic in and of itself. So
before we go too far along, tell the audience what a habeas means.
Yeah, so I mean, a habeas, way back when we were governed by the common law, is an extraordinary writ. In other words, it basically says bring the body before the court. Explain why you're holding this person, and it can be filed in certain civil proceedings here in Florida, and also obviously in a criminal proceeding. So it just so happens that relief is codified in our Baker Act statute, and it says you can petition the court for habeas relief.
Yeah, there's all these terms in law that mean a lot of things. Habeas corpus, mandamus, and sometimes they're very specific to who you're asking to do something. Like if you're asking a regular participant, it's generally specific performance, but if you're asking the government, you're asking for mandamus, and it's basically the same thing. And it may be different in Florida and Boston and Utah and in Oklahoma than it is in Maryland, but these crazy words that we have to know. I guess we have to seem important for and language.
Apparently so.
Yeah, definitely so.
I think we may be the only two lawyers that don't take ourselves too seriously.
I've met a few others, but yeah, let's go with that. That we're two of two. I'm sure your wife as well, right?
She does. My wife is amazing. She's a brilliant lawyer in her own right, a better lawyer than me. So I'd like to give credit where it's due.
Yeah, my wife's a better lawyer than me too, but she's not a lawyer. So that's
there you go.
She's one of those people who actually like can study something and like absorbs everything she reads. And like me, it's like I'll start reading, I'll be like, but anyway, that's why I do a podcast. So what's the typical process like? What is the A to B, and obviously the prequel is what are your clients going through before they hit the system and then before they get to you?
Yeah, so typically the typical client who's calling us is a mom and dad who's calling us somewhere in the country. I mean, we certainly service your area, but also out west we've had calls from California and Oregon, and we've had a client from Hawaii. So they're all calling us for the same basic reason, which is they're tired of dealing with the chaos, and they may well have tried to get their loved one into treatment, and they're either dealing with somebody who will not go because they're adamant there's nothing wrong with them, or they won't take their medications, or maybe they went to treatment and then they left, and they go through this cycle. I call it the honeymoon period, where they go in, they're there for a period of time, 7-10 days, maybe 2 weeks. All of a sudden the hard work starts and they bounce. And this goes on for years. Okay. Or they start taking medications and they feel better. Well, now they feel fine. Why do they need the medications? And so we go through this cycle. And they may even have tried the legal route, but for whatever reason, it didn't work. And I've heard that before. Oh, that doesn't work. Okay, well, we need to figure out, well, like when you say it doesn't work, what does that actually mean? Because a court order is only as good as its enforceability, right? If it doesn't give me the ability to seek relief for a violation, then what good is it? So
Right.
You got to really have an examination as to what's been going on. Why hasn't the person stayed, right? What's worked and why? What hasn't worked and why? And, what are your goals? What are you hoping to accomplish? So those are just some of the things that when somebody calls us, and for the first 7 years, it was just me and my wife. We're lucky now we have an intake team, and so the intake team is going to spend a period of time going through all of this and finding out what's been going on. And the other issue, obviously, as lawyers, we're always concerned with what can we prove. Sometimes parents will say, well, I haven't seen him in 6 months. Okay, well, how do you know there's a problem? Well, I just know. And I'm sure that they do. But obviously, we have to have witnesses who can provide evidence. Have there been admissions? Did you find anything in the house, like paraphernalia? I mean, typically one of the things that alcoholics like to do is they like to hide empty alcohol containers all over the house. I mean, in the laundry, in their car. I mean, they'll bury it in the garden, anything. What have you found? What have they told you? I mean, those types of things. So we're always saying, okay, can we prove the case? And for some families, maybe there's another option other than we're running to court, because we are now talking about potentially having mom and dad take an adversarial position against the adult child. And for some families, that's very uncomfortable. And I get it. Going to court is scary. Lawyers are scary. Being in front of a judge is a scary thing because it's the unknown. And so it's about finding out what we have and what the family wants to do. And obviously, if we're going to move forward, typically our cases are all filed as some type of emergency, which means we're going to either get an ex parte order, probably within 24 hours, or we begin to be in front of a judge, even on a guardianship, because you can seek emergency relief under our guardianship statute too. Probably 2 to 4 days we're going to be in court. So things move rather rapidly in my world, because by the time they get to us, they're like, okay, we need to do this right now. So that's typically how it works.
You think there'd be a bigger market on adopting retired drug sniffing dogs for this kind of situation?
Yeah.
They'll help you find the evidence better than they. What would what is like a drastic recourse in your practice? Is guardianship considered fairly drastic, or you are seeking some sort of involuntary institutionalization beyond the evaluation, or is there some means to seek ordered institutionalization, whether it's a state or a private facility? I mean, what is the hardest thing, short of the criminal justice system, that you have to go through, and then we can go backwards to intermediary steps before that?
Yeah, I mean, so we're basically operating under two statutes. We have the Marchman Act here, which, as I said, is similar to the Mass Section 35, and that is a really special statute. I would say it's unique to Florida. I don't think there's anything else quite like it. I know that in Kentucky they have Casey's Law, but what we have here in Florida, especially South Florida, is a very unique statute, and that is for where we have a primary substance use disorder, drug use. And what's neat about the Marchman Act is that it's two pieces: assessment, treatment. And the court's not going to order treatment without the assessment. It's required under the statute. But that assessment period can be initiated on an emergency ex parte basis. So that means I could file my petition. The court looks at the four corners of the document and says, yep, sounds like an emergency, Mr. Astor, and then basically directs the sheriff to go and get this person. Now, I've got a whole team of retired cops on my staff, so they normally work with the sheriff's office. But something like that, depending on the county and how busy the court is, I can normally get a pickup order 2, 3, 4 hours, and I can get somebody basically picked up and taken to a place of safety where we can at least keep them initially for 72 hours. And then, obviously, they're entitled to due process, and then we get back in front of a judge, normally within 10 days for a full-blown evidentiary hearing, if it's needed. I mean, they may just agree to stay. But that allows me to put people into treatment for periods of 90 days. And while it sounds good, it's very narrow in its relief. it is a court order that says Mark's going to treatment for 90 days because there's a primary substance use disorder. But for other families, they might want more control over that, and that's where the guardianship piece comes in. So obviously, we're talking about taking away about a dozen rights under our guardianship statute,
Sure.
And we might be filing Marchman Act and guardianship together because Marchman is really quick. Remember, I can get that ex parte order, but a guardianship is going to give me those 12 rights I can potentially give to the guardian and have a whole lot more control. So sometimes doing both together can be good. And oh, by the way, in the middle of this thing, somebody really had a total breakdown and they ended up getting Baker Acted from within the treatment statute. Now they're into a facility that's got a higher, can provide a higher level of care. So again, these three statutes, they all tend to work together because in one form or another, there's involuntary commitment. So understanding, right, how this all works together can be confusing for families. And I think, frankly, that's what separates us.
And you can help untangle that or explain how they weave together as opposed to being blockades to one another or subjects for confusion, that they're tools to put together, almost like running an offensive play or something. A couple things come to mind. One is that if somebody, even if they're involuntarily evaluated for 72 hours, while that may not be satisfying, there's 3 days worth of healthcare professionals who are making observations, and so now you've got witnesses as well. That assuming the initial evaluation period was under correct premises, they're probably going to confirm that this person needs help. So that's also good to have expert witnesses.
Yep.
I also think I just want to clarify for the audience what a guardianship means. And basically, if you are an adult, a guardianship reverts you back to the legal status of a minor child, and the person who has guardianship is the status of your parents when you are a minor child. So you lose, you don't have a right. You don't lose your right to not be abused, but you can't make any legal decisions for yourself. Basically the overly simplistic way of it, but it's pretty effective.
It's the perfect way to describe it. It's exactly what it is. We're turning the clock back.
You heard that, people? Perfect. And you heard it from a third party here. All right. So it sounds a little bit like, because Florida has taken such a progressive approach to this, that it's a little bit easier than the standard that I'm used to or that I've heard about to get somebody in that initial evaluation period. It seems to be Herculean here to do it without the person's consent. I mean, they literally need to be doing something crazy in front of law enforcement or a social worker for that to happen. Anything else, that they put it upon the citizenry, which I don't know about your experience with the citizenry or sometimes even ourselves, but we don't really want to do anything. I mean, we sort of have the government sort of there to protect and serve. When they don't, it's sort of like a bit of a body blow to do it. But I guess sometimes you just have to suck it up. But it sounds like in Florida, if you go in with an office like yours that knows how to phrase the things in the correct way that the court understands, that you have a much better chance of hitting whatever that level is, at least for that initial help. And sometimes that initial step is really the only thing you need to trigger all the others.
Yeah, you're spot on. And again, I mean, there are certain parts of Florida that are not as switched on as other parts. For instance, I mean, the Marchman Act requires that assessment. Now in Palm Beach County, there's a couple of different private entities that will do this for me. And obviously, if it's private in nature and they take health insurance or the family has resources to pay for it, I have a little more control over things. But some counties don't have that. Some parts of Florida, I mean, there's still the deep south, and you've got one option, it's the county facility. Well, good luck getting the facility to actually transmit the assessment to the court, because the court requires the assessment, and the person who's considered the qualified professional, in other words, somebody who is considered under the statute appropriate to give the court the opinion, will try getting into court. They don't care. You got to issue a subpoena, so what? Go enforce it. So there might be some parts there where I would not file that Marchman Act because I know I'm never going to get past that assessment, which I need. I might file for guardianship because I'm going to get a hearing in front of the judge now, and the statute says the court shall conduct a hearing. So it just depends, right? And so obviously, again, it's knowing the lay of the land that you're operating under, and which counties are better to file certain things than others, and what counties have the resources
is the right
to do the job.
Navigate that terrain, because, like you said, it's not one size fits all. It may seem like it, but it's not. I mean, some people would like things to be one size fits all, but that's just not how the world works.
Right. Exactly.
By the way, Palm Beach County, one of my favorite places. This shirt is from the Four Seasons in Manalapan.
So, well, it might be. I'll have to ask my wife where she got it, but
no,
she's also a good shopper, my wife.
This is actually this is a staff shirt. There's I'm sure it's long gone, but I was wearing a George Costanza T-shirt, just something I found somewhere, and the guy's like, "I love that shirt." I'm like, "I'll tell you what, I'll trade it to you for one of yours. I'm sure they give them to you for free." He's like, "Well, actually, they don't, but okay." But then he's like, "We're not allowed to do that." I'm like, "Well, sure,
we won't tell anybody."
Yeah, I won't tell anyone. Just we'll arrange something, and then so a few hours later he comes like, "Sir, that thing that you told me that you lost, I found it in here in the bag," and my shirt was already sort of wet because I was lying in the sun or whatever. He's like, "Do you want me to take that to the laundry for you?" And I'm like, "Yes, certainly." And
sure.
There we did. We did that. That's Jeff on the Palm Beach County black market. That's how call in the episode of Cops and take me away. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so a little fun story with Palm Beach in there. Anyway, just to lighten the mood a bit. So yeah. So, but where is your guardianship? You said the emergency petitions you can get in usually within a week. 2 or 3 business days. That's pretty darn quick. What is like what is at least the standard of your allegations and your guardianship petition? The minimum standard to sort of at least get that hearing.
So obviously, if we're filing an emergency petition, we've got to show there's some type of imminent threat, either the person's either their person or their property. I mean, for instance, I had a lawyer. I've actually put a couple lawyers in treatment. I've also represented lawyers, and as you know, lawyers can be very, very challenging clients because they know it all, even the stuff they don't know. They know that too. Right. They'll figure it out.
And the highest incidence of alcoholism among any profession.
Our profession is they say is twice as likely. You're twice as likely to develop a substance use disorder. And I can certainly have that discussion with you too. But yeah, so we're talking about an imminent threat. Now, normally it's just to the person, right? They're using, they're doing things that we wouldn't consider objectively reasonable. Maybe they're not eating, an eating disorder case, for instance, or they're abusing any type of medication. They sleep all day, they're up all night, they're hanging out with all kinds of strangers. They lost a bunch of weight. They don't bathe. They can't hold down a job. They're flunking out of school. I mean, those types of things. Maybe they're driving high or intoxicated. But when it comes to the business, so this lawyer that I told you we filed for guardianship over, he had a law firm. His wife, like mine, was his partner. Well, we needed to get control of not just the operating account so we could pay bills, but the trust account, because you and I both know you even sniff at the trust account the wrong way. Just mail your bar card back, you're out of the game for 5 years. And so maybe there's property, or maybe we just need to be able to pay someone's rent and their electricity bill and their car payment. So again, the guardianship piece can be tailored to the kind of relief that we really need. But most of the time what we're talking about is getting some emergency relief to get this person into treatment, get them into a stable environment, make sure they take their medication. And also we want to be able to have access to their medical records so we can see what is going on. Because unlike with the Marchman Act, you may put somebody into treatment and they don't want to sign a release of information. And now mom and dad can't find out what's going on. Well, because little Johnny's a little ticked off because he just got sent to treatment for the next 3 months. And he was very happy sitting at home getting stoned all day long in the basement.
Right.
So we want
access. He's
got
the firm credit card with, like a $90,000 limit.
Exactly.
Plus the American Express that he qualified for as a freshman in college, which now has a $37,000 limit.
But you got those too, I guess, right? When you were in college, the $99.
You bet I did. I never felt so important in my life.
Yeah.
I recently lost my wallet, so I had to replace all my credit cards and whatnot. And I had forgotten I had a credit card because I didn't use it anymore. And it has a $56,000 credit limit. I mean, so I'm sure there's some people that doesn't mean anything. That's like, same thing as having a $5,000 credit limit. But I should not have a $56,000. I should not have credit card debt of $56,000. Let's leave it. And I have no idea what I ever did to get that kind of credit limit or whatever it is. I'm sure I didn't ask for it, but just that. I mean, you could live for a while on credit especially if mostly you just need booze and some drugs, and you're hanging out in divey parts of town.
Yeah, I guess so. But at some point, at some point you're going to do something silly. You're going to get committed, or
Yeah,
you're going to
don't
get
ask me
arrested.
for details on how I know that. So
Yeah, or something tragic is going to happen.
yeah. Yeah, you said earlier that we can have a discussion about substance abuse, and or if it was just specific to lawyers, and that's fine, because I'm not sure how that is different than what we were talking about. So I'm more than happy to learn from the guest that's actually here with the expertise.
Yeah, I mean our profession is rampant with it. I mean, supposedly, no, that's not the correct word. I think statistically speaking, our profession is you're twice as likely to have somebody with a substance use disorder. And I think that's a combination of things. Number one, being a lawyer is stressful. I mean, it is, and it doesn't matter what area of the law that you practice in, but certainly if you're doing anything where you're going to be filing something in court, that there's pressure, right? The clients want it done quickly, they want it done right, and they want to win at all costs. Right. So even if they have to be the one to call the judge, and I've had that happen before, I'm calling the judge. Okay, well, I can't call the judge. So, right. So it tends to, it's a high pressure profession, but I think to a certain extent, it also attracts a certain type of individual, especially one that wants to go to court and fight. And I think as a result, somebody can come into the person and start to develop an issue. And, I do a lot of CLEs, for lawyers. I got myself approved to be a CLE provider in the state of Florida, and actually I'm going to be speaking to like 3 or 4 different bar associations between now and the end of the year. And every time I speak to a group of lawyers, whether it's 10 lawyers or 50 lawyers or whatever it is, at the end of my CLE, I tell them, if there's anybody in the audience who has a problem, you are welcome to call me. Because here in Florida, the Florida bar will really bend over backwards to help a lawyer who's got a problem.
Right.
And you can call them confidentially and they will help you. Now, if you don't ask for help and you do something silly, as well as I do, you get pinched for DUI. I mean, you're going to get disciplined by the bar. So I tell every lawyer, every group of lawyers I speak to, if you have a problem and you don't want to call the bar, call me. We'll have a confidential conversation, and I'll connect you with some resources. And normally, without failure, somebody calls. So that's the nature of what we do. It is stressful, and I've had to be mindful of my own well-being over the years, because I love helping people, but not every client has reasonable and rational expectations about what we can do.
Right.
Every client thinks they have a winning case.
And you're typically dealing with them with either the worst or most important or both thing that's going on in their life, either ever or at least at that point in time. But yeah, and just so anybody who didn't figure it out, CLE stands for Continuing Legal Education.
Thank you.
Sorry. It's okay. I'm the straw man for the audience out here. Lots of the shows I do with academics and authorities and esoteric and arcane and types of subjects, and sometimes they scoff at my no, they're always very nice and polite about it, but you can see on their face, I go, just remember, you're talking to an idiot. So, I mean, don't expect me to necessarily know the difference between the serpent and the snake in the Garden of Eden. So, explain to me like I'm an idiot, because in this case, I am. So, anyway, all right. What is if there is anything typical, what is the typical anatomy of finding the client, accepting the client? I mean, are they paying you on an hourly basis? Is part of the business model that maybe if you do apply for disability or Social Security or something, that you get a contingency on that as well? I mean, you have to make money to do a business. Unless you're a not-for-profit, you can't help people without being able to help yourself too.
Yeah, so it depends on the case. I mean, the cases where those Baker Act cases where we're getting people out, it's a flat fee, and people pay me a fee to get their loved one out as quickly as possible. So that's that. The other types of cases, a portion of it is a non-refundable retainer, and then we work on an hourly basis. So it's a little bit of both, right? There's a basic retainer that gives us enough money so we can get the job done, and it covers our time in the case up until that point. And then there's obviously additional fees, and we bill against that retainer. And there's obviously anything left in the end, that's client's money, it goes back to the client.
Right.
So, is that a pun?
Yeah. No, he said Orange County, Seminole County, we have lager audience. I don't know if it was larger audience or lager as in beer. So I wanted to know if that was a pun from Kevin.
Right.
I don't know if I'm supposed to say it out loud or not, but I just did. So there we go. Orange County is obviously where Kevin is admitting is from. So if you want to go get him, at least you now have a county to seek and destroy. Me, I've given you a state, so it's probably a little bit harder. But there might be more people in Orange County, Florida, than there are in my state. I'm not sure.
Maybe
there might be, and there's certainly more places in Orange County to get lost than there are here. Try to find someone in Disney World if you've lost them. It's not that easy. Okay, so what are the different levels of institutions ranging from private, inpatient? I mean, all I know about rehab is what I've seen on TV. And some of that is from Dr. Drew, who, whatever happened to him, Celebrity Rehab and TV shows, which are overly dramatized. But basically what I know is, generally speaking, the person, they're like, nobody can keep you here. You can leave anytime you want. So people, come in and out. But there's got to be different levels. As you mentioned earlier, there was a 90-day order. Obviously, that person can't leave, but I don't know if they can be restrained or it's just they're violating the order if they leave. So what are sort of the different levels of assistance, ranging from something less formal to different degrees of voluntary or semi-involuntary, inpatient to basically institutionalization, where it's basically a secure situation, prison-esque but not prison?
Yeah. So look, as I tell families, because sometimes they'll call and say, we've been through the ringer. They've been in and out of treatment. I just want you to lock them up. Okay, there's only two ways you're getting locked up. Either the state locks you up, county jail, some type of state mental health system, right, where they can physically lock the doors, or a judge can lock you up because you violated a court order. So as a general rule, we are putting people into treatment. And even though it may be an involuntary commitment order, in other words, an order that says, Mark, you're going to treatment for the next 90 days, the facility, even if it's a county facility where I'm court ordered to go, if I have the ability, if I want to walk out, they're not going to restrain me, right? They're not allowed to. And obviously, if I'm in a private facility where mom and dad or the health insurance company has paid the freight, I could walk out. They're not going to restrain me because they don't have any legal right to forcibly imprison me. But if I walk out, there are going to be consequences for that, because now I violated the court order. And before I went into treatment, pursuant to that court order, the judge said to me, Mark, I'm just letting you know, I'm ordering you into treatment. And what that means is, if you violate and, this case comes back before me and that allegation is proven, I have the right to throw you in jail and hold you in contempt. I can send you away for 5 months and 29 days. I'm not trying to threaten you. I'm just letting you know how this works. Are we on the same page here? And again, it depends on which county you're in. For instance, if I'm in South Florida, I got to file some type of motion for contempt, a show cause motion, asking the judge to bring this person back in and have a hearing. And if the court finds they violated the court order, potentially sanction them by throwing them in jail. Now, if I'm in the north end of this, I will tell you, in the north end of Florida, up in Tallahassee, there's a judge up there. If he finds out that you left treatment, if I file a motion, he don't need a hearing. He's just going to issue a bench warrant and tell the cops to go find me and drag me off to the county jail. So again, it depends where you are. But as a general rule, what makes these proceedings work, because they're civil in nature, is their enforceability, my ability to go back to court and seek relief from the judge. Now, I will tell you, as a general rule, I don't think maybe one time I've had somebody that was placed in jail for a week, but it rarely happens, because most people, even though they don't want to go to treatment, would rather be in treatment than be in the county jail.
Yeah.
Usually because the food's better in treatment than it is in the county jail.
Food's important.
Right? Yeah. Do you know the number one reason people leave treatment? Because the food sucks. So again, I know this sounds odd, but when I go to visit a lot of treatment centers, I say to them, how's the food here? Is it any good? Do you have a chef? I mean, are you taking care of people's dietary needs, or are you feeding them junk? Because if you're feeding people junk food, right, they may well leave. Beside the fact, if you're dealing with somebody who's got a chemical imbalance, the last thing you should be doing is feeding them more chemicals through their food. So that's important. And, people generally will say, okay, I guess I'm going to go back to treatment. I had a judge who said, okay, here's what I'm doing. I'm going to find you in contempt, and I'm going to allow you to purge that contempt so I don't throw you in jail if you agree to go back. What do you want to do? You want to go back to treatment, or do you just want to sit in the county jail? And most people will choose treatment. Usually. So it's the enforceability and the accountability that makes it work. But some families, I've had them over the years say, well, I don't want to have him go to jail. Well, then there's no point in doing this, because there has to be consequences for not doing what needs to be done, because otherwise this is going to continue. And like any disease, it's progressive, which means it's going to get worse. Now, I know it's uncomfortable, but you got to do this.
If they keep violating, I guess there's two choices. One, you then file for the guardianship, or you file for the permanent guardianship if it was temporary. Or is there an option where the judge says, okay, now you're involuntary, I'm not going to send you to jail, but I'm going to send you to a treatment center where they can restrain you? Is there such a thing as that latter?
Not really, but there are some facilities that are what I would call semi-secure. And what that means is you would need sort of like a security badge to get the door to open. So some facilities are more secure than us. Now, the other option is I put them in a facility, and I had this happen too. This was a lawyer who was the client who didn't want to listen, and we put his daughter in a facility that was out in West Palm Beach County, and it was literally a treatment center. It was 3 buildings in the middle of sugar canes as far as you could see. So in my mind, I'm saying, if she walks out, where is she going? I mean, she's 10, 15 miles from the rest of civilization. Unfortunately, the judge who heard the case, in his infinite wisdom, when she asked for her cell phone, she said, could I have my cell phone just for the first 24 hours? And I said, Judge, not a good idea. And of course, what do you think she did the first night she was in there? She called an Uber and jumped on a plane. But I said to the father, why don't we should file for a guardianship, because then I can restrict her ability to travel. I can ask TSA to put her on a no-fly list so she can't jump on a plane. She ended up getting on a plane to Mexico. I sent my investigator down. He found her and brought her back. The point is that you can only restrict somebody so much.
Yeah, and not everyone has access to an investigator who can fly down to Mexico and bring somebody back also.
Yeah,
and to operate in Mexico to do so. Well, it sounds like you have both a national practice and the ability to do some rather extraordinary things. So, I mean, that's terrific. So I know we spend most of our time talking about Florida and, in my part, Maryland, a little Boston, but I don't want to give short shrift to the fact that your practice is national, and obviously your arms can go much longer than that as well.
Yeah, I mean, we are, even though I'm a Florida-based lawyer, I mean, we are bringing people into treatment here. I'm normally getting either someone's here or I'm getting them here, and we're pretty good at getting them here too. And it might involve telling them a little white lie, come to Florida for treatment. It might involve you working with counsel in another state. Why don't we get a guardianship in another state and use that as the vehicle to move the person to Florida, and then I can go to court and ask the judge to, quote, domesticate, which is a legal proceeding where I get a Florida judge to recognize, say, a Pennsylvania or a Maryland court order. So if there's a problem down here, I can seek enforcement in Florida as opposed to having to run back to Maryland. So there's a number of ways to get people down here.
So geography is another challenge that you know how to overcome and get them into the jurisdiction where you're well known and you know how to navigate it, where you can get them their best success. So while it might be a little bit more of a financial investment, the chances of success, or at least predictable outcomes, are much more in their favor. So that that's where I guess an educated client, or giving the client the full lay of the land, is pretty important. I am sure during the course of the last 40 minutes or so we've spoken together, that there have been things that you've wanted to bring up, or things I should have asked you that I haven't. So this is the opportunity to, anything that I didn't bring up that should be part of what you normally talk about or want to talk about, have at you.
Yeah, and I appreciate you giving me that opportunity. And I think this is really directed to the families out there who feel like they've run out of options. I totally get it. I've spoken to literally thousands and thousands of families over the years, and a lot of them feel like, I'm out of options. There's nothing else I can do. And I think if there's any message I can give you, is that may not be true. And I would encourage you to pick up the phone and have a conversation with us about what options might be available. And it may not involve me. So those are options that potentially we could give you. The other thing I would tell you is I try to give as much information as I can away for free. So on our YouTube channel, there's 1,200 videos, and you can watch them all till the cows come home. And it talks all about these issues. I make about 2 or 3 videos every single day, and they're all on the YouTube channel. On our website, I have a brand new book that I wrote all about the Marchman Act. It's 9 chapters, written, video, and all you got to do is click on the link. You give us your name and your email address. We'll send you the book for free. So there's a lot of content out there that I think people should have. They shouldn't have to call a lawyer and pay a lawyer to give them the right information. And also, there's a lot of misinformation out there. As well as I do, people are now going to ChatGPT for legal advice. Mm-hmm. And they're also going for other types of advice too. So ChatGPT and Google and some of these other platforms, unfortunately, don't always give the family the right advice because, well, they probably never handled a case like, the kind of cases that you and I would do in our particular professions. So call us. Let's see what we can do to help you. And if we can, we'll give you some options.
I'm going to read the YouTube address because the people who are watching can see it, but on audio they want it. It's https://www.youtube.com/@AstorSimovich law. There's no spaces or anything. It's Astor Simovich law, one word. And why don't you read or say the number?
Say that one more time. Read.
Your phone. Never mind. It's there. 561-419-6095 is the telephone number, and the website of preference is what's the website?
Yep. So it's mentalhealthaddictionlawfirm.com, mentalhealthaddictionlawfirm.com, and actually, if they just Google my name, my videos are probably going to come up on the first page. You'll find a boatload of content, and I've done some local TV, and I was just on Fox talking about some of this stuff. So I shouldn't be hard to find. It would be very difficult for me to hide.
Okay, well, if you do, I'll get your own investigator to find you and pull you back.
There you go. He knows where to find me too.
That's right. I would hope so. That's how he gets paid. So yep. It's very good. Well, you're doing the Lord's work and all the Lord's work, and for people who are non-religious, doing good work. And it's hard and it's complicated, but it sounds like it's not necessarily, doesn't mean it's not hard, it's not complicated, but this is the land that you till, and so that it. So you're a guy for that one stop and has the resources and the connections within your office or your 6 degrees of separation to help make a very difficult situation better if people are just willing to do that commitment to A, call and ask for help, and then B, either find the resources that you make available or to retain your office.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you to the audience here. For those of you who are new to Garden of Thought, especially to those of you in the Sports Jedi Network, maybe you were expecting to have a pro wrestler or something, but every other week or so, usually in the middle of the week, I have these shows that are more policy-based, legal, business, science, tech. Sometimes they're fun and fantastical. I once had a guy with like 17 patents on robots. I'm sure he's going to destroy the world. But I am a lawyer, and I do like to visit the law as well, but especially when it's broad-based things that are either very interesting or niche, or that I think everyone would benefit from knowing about. And this is exactly that. And Mr. Astor came into my feed, and he didn't slide into my DMs, but it came into my feed, and I invited him, and he said yes. And I think this is great information. So thanks so much for being here. Audience, thank you so much. If you want to follow me for wrestling content, you can find me on the X at @dose_evil. For non-wrestling on the X, which is mostly dormant, is @EckersfellMD. I spend a lot of time here lately on the Sports Jedi Network, and hopefully that'll continue. Garden of Thought you can also find here on Sports Jedi or on its own podcast feed, its own YouTube channel at Garden of Thought Pod. I should probably get rid of some of those things. Also on the Wrestling Soup Network, and I do so the hallmark shows I do here are the MLW files with my best friend, Mr. Thomas, erstwhile of MLW Wrestling. And on Wrestling Soup, probably my flagship show is it's not mine, I'm the co-host. Lufisto, the legend, is the host, and we review LFG on the Mighty Mighty Wrestling Soup Network. So thanks, everyone. Thanks to our guest, and you'll hear from us next time.
Thank you.